2/the reduction of indication. This metaphysical attachment is evidenced in the theme to which we now return, the extrinsic relation of the indicative sign to expression. Husserl devotes only 3 paragraphs to the essence of indication 99 and, in the same chapter, 11 paragraphs to expression. His logical and epistemological concern here is to secure the originality of expression as meaning and as relation to an ideal object. The treatment of indication therefore must be brief, preliminary, and reductive. Indication must be set aside, abstracted, and reduced as an extrinsic and empirical phenomenon, even if it is in fact closely related to expression, empirically interwoven with expression. But such a reduction is difficult. It is only apparently accomplished at the end of the 3rd paragraph. Indicative functions, sometimes of another kind, continually reappear further on, and getting rid of them will be an infinite task. Husserl's whole enterprise, and far beyond the investigations, would be threatened if the Verpflichtung which couples the indicative sign to expression were absolutely irreducible, if it were in principle inextricable, and if indication were essentially internal to the movement of expression rather than being only conjoined to it, however tenaciously. What is an indicative sign? First, it may be natural. The canals of Mars indicate the possible presence of intelligent beings, as well as artificial, the chalk mark, the stigmata, all the instruments of conventional designation. 1 Here the opposition between nature and convention has no pertinence whatsoever and in no way divides the unity of the indicative function. What is this unity? Husserl describes it as being a certain motivation. 0. Motivierung. It is what moves something such as a thinking being to pass by thought from something to something else. For the moment, this definition must remain quite general. This passage may be affected in conviction, Vermutung, or presumption, Vermutung, and it always links an actual consciousness to a known actual consciousness. For motivation considered in this degree of generality, this cognition may concern any object, Gegenstand, or state of affairs, Sachverhalt, and not necessarily empirical existence, that is, individuals. In order to designate the category of the known, actual or known actual, Husserl intentionally uses very general concepts, Sein, Bestand, which may cover being or subsistence and the structure of both ideal objects and empirical existence. Sein, Bestehen, and Bestand, frequent and fundamental words in the beginning of the section, are not reducible to Dasein, Existieren, and Realitat, and this difference matters a great deal for Husserl, as we shall see in a moment. Husserl thus defines the essential character which most generally incorporates all of the indicative functions. In these we discover as a common circumstance the fact that certain objects or states of affairs of whose reality, Bestand, someone has actual knowledge indicate, Anzeigen, to him the reality of certain other objects or states of affairs, in the sense that his belief in the being, Sein, of the one is experienced, though not at all evidently, as motivating a belief or surmise in the being of the other. First investigation, I/et, modified, p. 270. But this essential character is still so general that it covers the whole field of indication and even more. Or, rather, since it is certainly an Anzeigen that is described here, let us say that this common character goes beyond indication in the strict sense, something with which he will now have to deal. Thus we see why it was so important to distinguish between Sein and Bestand, on the one hand, and existence, Dasein, or Realitat, on the other. General motivation thus defined is a simple because which may just as well have the sense of indicative allusion, Hinweis, as that of deductive, evident, and apodictic demonstration, Beweis. In this latter case, the because links together the evident and ideal necessities which are permanent and which persist beyond every empirical height mine. An ideal rule is here revealed which extends its sway beyond the judgments here and now united by motivation. In a supreme-empirical generality it comprehends as such all judgments having a like content, all judgments, even, having a like form. 3. Et. p. 271. Motivations linking together lived experiences, as well as acts which grasp necessary and evident idealities and ideal objectivities, may belong to the contingent and empirical order of non-evident indication. However, the relations which unite the contents of ideal objects in evident demonstration are not cases of indication. The whole analysis of section 3 demonstrates the following. 1. Even if or indicates be with complete empirical certitude, with the highest probability, this indication will never be a demonstration of apodictic necessities or, to employ classical terms, truths of reason in contrast to truths of fact. 2. Even if, on the contrary, indication does seem to intervene in a demonstration, it will always be on the side of psychic motivations, acts, beliefs, etc., and never on the side of the content of the truths involved. This indispensable distinction between Hinweis and Beweis, indication and demonstration, does not merely pose a problem whose form is analogous to the one which we raised earlier apropos of the Zeigen. What can be meant by showing, Weisen, in general before it is divided up into the indicative pointing out, Hinweis, of the Necene and the demonstration, Beweis, which exhibits in the evidence of proof. This distinction also sharpens the difficulty which we already noted in the problem of interweaving. We now know in fact that, for the order of signification in general, the whole of psychic experience, under the surface character of its acts, even when they intend idealities and objective necessities, contains only indicative concatenations. The indicative sign falls outside the content of absolutely ideal objectivity, that is, outside truth. Here again, the very possibility of this exteriority, or rather this extrinsic character of the indicative sign, is inseparable from the possibility of all the forthcoming reductions, be they eidetic or transcendental. Having its origin in the phenomena of association to and always connecting empirical existence in the world, indicative signification in language will cover everything that falls subject to the reductions, factuality, worldly existence, essential non-necessity, non-evidence, etc. Would we not be already justified in saying that the whole future problem of the reduction and all the conceptual differences in which it is articulated, fact/essence, worldliness/transcendentality, and all the oppositions systematically involved with it, are opened up in a divergence between two kinds of signs? And would we not be right again in saying that this system is set up at the same time as this divergence, if not in it and as a result of it? Does not the concept of parallelism, which defines the relations between the purely psychic, which is in the world, and the purely transcendental, which is not, and which thus sums up the whole enigma of Husserl's phenomenology, already present itself here in the form of a relation between two modes of signification? And yet Husserl, who never wanted to assimilate experience in general, empirical or transcendental, with language, will ceaselessly strive to keep signification outside the self. Presence of transcendental life. The question we have just raised brings us from commentary to interpretation. If we could reply in the affirmative, we would have to conclude, against the express intention of Husserl, that even before becoming a method the reduction would already be at work in the most spontaneous act of spoken discourse, the simple practice of the spoken word, the power of expression. Although this conclusion would constitute for us in a certain sense the truth of phenomenology, it would at a certain level contradict the express intention of Husserl for two sorts of reasons. For on the one hand, as we mentioned above, Husserl believes in the existence of a pre-expressive and pre-linguistic stratum of sense, which the reduction must sometimes disclose by excluding the stratum of language. On the other hand, although there is no expression and meaning without speech, not everything in speech is expressive. Although discourse would not be possible without an expressive core, one could almost say that the totality of speech is caught up in an indicative web.